When you look on the back of these seed packets, you can be confident that it's basically a bunch of lies. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Scott Barnes Farming. This time we're going to be covering the actual planting. So seed selection, why I chose them, and my whole plan with that. Just like with my last video, I'm going to try to keep a running tally of what all of these plants cost so I can give kind of a total for the plant section and then a total for the building, the prep, and all the planting together. As I go through this list of plants and the seeds that I selected, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be thinking, what about the full shade aspect of this episode? And I will cover that at the end just to kind of like integrate all the little things and thoughts I've had for all the plants and the garden space as a whole in general. So because I had such limited space, each of my beds was 3 feet by 6 feet, so a total of 36 feet I was working with. I wanted to make sure I could optimize my space as much as possible. And that led me to square foot gardening. And square foot gardening is exactly what it sounds like. Basically, you divide your bed up into 1 square foot units and plant accordingly. So different plants will be able to fit more into each. So like a broccoli, you can put 1 broccoli plant in a square foot. But like radishes, you could put 9 in a single square foot. Now, if you're used to traditional gardening, usually you think of rows. So you plant one strip of things, another strip of things, and another, leaving a fair bit of room between rows, but not so much in between the plants in the individual rows. And square foot gardening is just the idea of that, like that row spacing is unnecessary. If plants are good in single file, only like 3 inches apart, they don't need to be 6 inches apart in the rows. Some people are just unfamiliar with this because if you look at like the back of a seed packet like this, it will actually say spacing 15 inches, 3 inches. So they're saying put 3 inches between each plant in a row and then 15 inches between each row. But that's just completely unnecessary. You're wasting space at that point. To plan all of this out, I did my typical analytical thing and made a spreadsheet for it, just basically marking off each square foot, what it would be and what I would fill it with. And that's what we have here. And now I'm just going to go through every item on that and tell you kind of why I planted that and why I planted it where it is. The way this chart works is it's basically color coded according to what the plant is, and the initial also corresponds with that, but then the number corresponds with how many plants are going to be in that square foot. So to start, the 2 top left squares are strawberry plants, and I decided to put 2 in each square foot of that. You see a couple different things on the square foot guidelines. Some say only put 1 strawberry plant, others say you can put up to 4. And I settled on 2 because the people who argue for 1 are basically saying a strawberry is going to send out runners that will fill that space, and that's true, but you kind of have to wait for that. Whereas the people who advocate for 4 say if you want, maximum planting for that square foot, put 4 in, and you're immediately going to start getting 4. So I wanted to compromise. I put 2 in there so that way I can kind of like get more going from the start, and then knowing that they will spread in the future. And so to round out that first row, we have O1 on the right there, which is oregano. Oregano is just my like favorite herb, so I use it a lot and want to plant a lot of it. You can see actually I have a few different parts in both garden beds where I'm growing oregano. So yeah, and it's supposed to go really well next to strawberry. Next, you see a lot of C16 squares, and C in orange, it should be apparent that those are carrots. 16 carrots per square. They're like my favorite vegetable, but I do have 2 different distinctions here. In the first bed with this first grouping, I'm trying to do rainbow carrots. Come on. Rainbow carrots. And that was just because I saw like all these different heirloom variety carrots, the black, the purple, the reds, and I kind of want to try them all, but I didn't want to have to buy all the seeds, so hopefully this will, help me out with that. And then in the second bed, I'm going more traditional with a couple different orange carrot varieties. I got the Tender Sweet and the Danvers, and basically just I want to see what the difference was between those. So dropping down to the middle right section, there's now an L1, and that will be lavender. It's hard to make out with the border, but that second lavender is actually going to be in the ground. I wanted to see how it would grow in the bed versus compared to like in the native soil. So next to that, we have a couple weird squares where you see the G5 and then one that says like R6/G2. The G's are garlic. I'm going to try to plant 5 in 1 square foot and then 2 in another. And that one will share 6 spots with watermelon radish. And I got these from a friend, so that's why they're informal. But I think the spacing should work, that both of those should be able to fit there. And yeah, so that's what those two are. So R1 below the lavender, that is rosemary. And just to note that the rosemary and lavender are kind of like sequestered off from the rest of the herbs. Apparently with, I don't know, just the way that companion planting goes, rosemary and lavender don't play nice with other herbs. So that's why they're on their own, but they don't mind each other. Now next you'll see that question mark there. That's just, I don't know what I'm going to put there yet. I think I might put another broccoli, but TBD at this point. It's tough to plan all of this out. But speaking of broccoli, in the lower left there, finishing out the first bed, is in fact broccoli, B1. So broccoli is actually like my second favorite vegetable, and I wish we could grow more of it. But I didn't want to dedicate too much of the garden space to it just because it does take up so much space. And I wanted to experiment a little more this year and try a few other different things, like cauliflower. I've actually gotten more into cauliflower recently, so yeah, just wanted to throw that into the mix as well, see how it does. So like I said, that next little row there is actually outside the bed, but that first one on the left, C1, is chamomile. Now I really like chamomile tea. I've tried growing chamomile before, but I started it inside and it just kind of failed. So I'm excited to see if actually starting it outside in the dirt will be more successful this time. Finally, for that last row that's on the outside of the bed, I am planting lentils. Lentils are also something I've gotten into recently that I really enjoyed, so I wanted to see if I could grow them myself, maybe make some stuff from them. And similarly, they may do better in the raised bed or better in the native soil, so I wanted to plant them in both and see how they are. So you can see that in the second raised bed, there is a section for some lentils in there as well. Before we jump into the second raised bed section there, I realize we need to backtrack and I need to talk about the B1 that's in front of the strawberries. That is also outside the bed, and that is going to be borage, also which I got from my friend. Borage is supposed to just be a really good companion plant for strawberries because they attract a lot of pollinators, and strawberries can need that pollinator help, so hopefully those will be a good spot for them. Getting into the second raised bed, up on the top left there, we start with O5, and that is going to be these onions. I do have some concerns with the onions just because, like I said, this is a full shade garden. I'll talk about more about that in a second. So I'm not 100% sure if these will be successful, but I wanted to try them. So below and next to the onions, we then have marigolds. Marigolds are a classic companion plant for gardens. They do well against pretty much everything. They help, bring in pollinators, and they're just all around great. So hoping that they do well here. You'll see that on the right I have 4, and on the bottom I have 3. This is another one that I saw conflicting accounts for how many can fit in a square foot. Here I'm just going to see which does better. So next to that, we then have another oregano, and after that, we have our first T1, which is tomato, specifically Roma. Now, I'm actually not a big tomato person. My friends make fun of me for this, but I like tomato products, not tomatoes themselves.
Ketchup, 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 ketchup. Ketchup is ketchup. It goes with everything. It's given me pleasure.
Which is why I went with Roma, because they are a good paste tomato, and maybe I can make some ketchup or sauce from these. We'll see what I get. Above the tomatoes, which I'm realizing I forgot on that first row, is B4, which is basil. This is regular sweet basil. You'll also see that I have more basil next to the tomato on the bottom. So again, very good companion plant for them, and I wanted to make sure that they were next to each other both times. Now for the second bed, we've kind of already gone over the middle section, which is the regular orange carrots and a couple more broccoli. But below that, we have KV1 and KL1, which are two varieties of kale. Um, I'm gonna butcher pronouncing these. So there's two varieties of kale, which is weird because I don't really like kale, but I'm gonna see maybe these types of kale, maybe I will like. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. To round out that last flower bed, I am gonna put a sunflower in. Similar to some of the other herbs, I wanted to plant a sunflower in the raised bed and then outside the raised bed, and we'll just see, how they grow, if there are any differences, things like that. And if you're paying attention, bonus points to you if you swallow this out, but the top of this chart is strawberries, the bottom is sunflowers. So it kind of went from shortest to highest. And there was a reason for that because the top side is the south side, so kind of closest to the sun. If it's all going up like this while the sun's coming in from this direction, nothing should shade out the plants behind it as they go in increasingly height order. Just a little design thing I thought was nice for the beds. You'll also notice that I have a kind of a collection of squares down and below everything else. And this is just random flowers that I want to put in. I have everything from, black-eyed Susans to Coreopsis, bachelor's button, cosmos, just a little bit of everything. Yeah, just kind of like in that open space outside the beds. I just want to make a nice looking garden. I appreciate both the functionality of vegetables and the aesthetics of flowers. So making it all happen, hopefully. And then last but certainly not least, the two gigantic blue squares up top. Those are probably the highlight of my garden, which are my blueberry bushes. I got two, put them in containers, and I'm going to try to container grow them next to the garden, but we'll see how those go. It's something I'm really excited about because I really like the idea of perennials that can grow a lot over the years. Um, and I know blueberries are really good for containers, so hopefully that's something that will pay off well. Hey guys, editing Scott here. This was going to be the part where I was going to start going into all of the full shade stuff and the price of everything, but I realized the video was getting a little bit long, so I think I'll stop here and go over all of that in a third finale part where we'll wrap it all up and go over kind of like the bigger topics. But I hope to see you there, and I hope you enjoyed this seed selection and square foot gardening coverage. But yeah, till next time.